I wanted to talk about how Russian state media and Russian political figures have reacted to the fact that there's an arrest warrant out for their nation's leader. Seems like pretty major news, seems like a pretty big update. We can see right now in the United States all of the political rustling that's happening because of the news that broke from Donald Trump saying that, hey, look, I might get arrested this Tuesday. There's a decent chance that that might happen. Hello. Sorry, my CIA handler walked in off screen. And so due to all that news in the United States, you would look over to Russia and you would think, okay, there must be a huge hubbub happening in Russia. And at first, you would actually be wrong. Russian state media reacted to this by basically completely ignoring it for the first 24 hours, as they didn't know what to say about their country's leader having an arrest warrant out for him for kidnapping children, which is what the arrest warrant was for. It was for the kidnapping of 6,000 children during the war. And so on Solonyev's show, he didn't even explicitly talk about the Hague or the fact that he issued an arrest warrant for Putin. Instead, he warned that any country that would dare even declare its intention to detain Putin, which all the nations that are signatories to the ICC, technically by their rules, would have to under their laws. There's over 100 countries in the ICC that are signatories to the ICC. He says that any country that would dare even declare its intention to do so should get nuked. Millions should die if they follow the ICC's rules. Listen to what he has to say.
И вообще, любая структура, любая...
Okay, one second.
И вообще...
And generally, any structure or any country which even dares, like the German scumbag, the minister of, what is it, justice? Makes sense that he wouldn't know what that is. To say that they'll attempt to implement it is a declaration of war. And it calls for an immediate nuclear strike on that country. Immediate. That's to say, any attempt to do it, to go against the will of the Russian people, which has made itself very clear, must result in a missile strike. And that idiot, the justice minister, must be acquainted with the Sarmat missile. Each of the degenerates who considers it legitimate to do what they've done should be held responsible. Okay, so totally normal thing to find out that the person you're working for helped kidnap 6,000 children, and your reaction to it is, I don't care, we're going to nuke you. In fact, they went further than just threatening the world. They started to say, oh, the world's in the wrong here. It's not that we're in the wrong because we kidnapped over 6,000 Ukrainian children. It's a lot more. It's just what the UN probe looked into. The Russian state TV actually went further and says that, in fact, not only should, Europe be nuked or any nation be nuked if they ended up detaining Vladimir Putin, as the International Criminal Court has asked them to do through this ruling. Not only should they be nuked, but Russia actually saved the Ukrainian children from their life in Ukraine, and that they should be thanked for their fantastic deed. Look at this. Let's listen to what they had to say here. We, on the contrary, unlike the Americans, are trying to save children and women from the contact line, the front line. See, if you call this deportation trying to save children from barbaric Ukrainian shelling, according to Khan and these Brits, we should have just left them on the front line and let them die, just as Iraqi children died due to the American barbaric bombing. That's how they approach the situation. Okay, so I've already talked about this in my video about the ICC's ruling that Vladimir Putin has an arrest warrant out for him. I've talked about this argument. It's been made before on a lot of Telegram channels, pro-war nationalist Telegram channels. I've seen it before being made by other pro-Russian YouTubers. I've seen it on Twitter. It is not just that the Russians move these children from the contact line. They could have done that inside of Ukraine. In fact, they could have moved them away from the contact line and then given them back to the Ukrainian government at a different point. They could have gone through Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They could have gone through any number of routes back into Ukraine. What the Russians did, and this is what the UN probe found, This is what the United Nations found. This is what people studying these war crimes at Yale found. This is what investigators on the ground found. This is what the Washington Post has reported on in the past, is that the Russian army would systematically go to orphanages across Ukraine as they were leaving territory, and even before they were leaving territory in areas like Kherson, search for kids as the kids were hidden in the homes of orphanage staff, and the kids hid from the soldiers. They would try to find the children, load them into trucks, take them out of Ukraine, deporting them illegally. Then, after they deport them illegally, they try to indoctrinate them into saying, you do not speak Ukrainian. You are not Ukrainians. Ukrainians are just fake. You're truly Russian. And then they adopt them out to Russian families, which we've seen TV show hosts brag to Putin on camera in front of people. Hey, I adopted one of those children that we looted from the country. Isn't that great? That is not protecting them from the front line. That is stealing a generation of children from a nation, Ukraine, in demographic crisis. It sounds like one nation trying to supplement their own demographic crisis by looting the youth of another nation, which is, of course, that nation's future. Children that they've raised over the last 14, 15, 16 years, however long that children's been alive, trying to rob them of their culture, rob them of their country, and rob Ukraine of its next generation. That is not protecting them from the front line. That is a war crime, as the UN probe found. And that is why there's an arrest warrant out for Vladimir Putin. But there's also been a Russian governmental response, specifically from Dmitry Medvedev. Dmitry Medvedev is the former president of Russia. He's been a part of Putin's team for a while now. He was on Putin's campaign team in 1999. Most of Putin's team from back then are either dead, exiled, or they're out of politics. Dmitry Medvedev is one of the originals who have not either been isolated from Putin or have died. So he's somebody who's very loyal to him. He was somebody who, due to his loyalty, was made president as Putin had to step down for a little bit before reascending to power due to constitutional restraints, before the constitution was stretched to fit whatever Putin wanted. And he's somebody that many people thought would be the next liberal reformer of Russia. They thought when Medvedev goes into power, he's different from Putin. He's going to liberally reform Russia. Now, whatever people might have first thought when they saw Medvedev rise to the presidency and what people might have thought of him, nowadays, everyone acknowledges that he's a fascist dickwad. And what he has said in response to, not only because of his comments about Ukraineness being a disease of the mind, his hardcore justification for the invasion, his hardcore defense of Putin, the perpetrator of these horrific crimes, but now also he is talking about a military response if the ICC's ruling was to be carried out. The judges of the ICC got angry in vain. Look, we are brave. We didn't shit ourselves to raise our hand against the largest nuclear power. Alas, gentlemen, everyone walks under God and missiles. It is quite possible to imagine using a hypersonic missile from the North Sea from a Russian ship on the Hague courthouse. It cannot be shot down, he wrote. Medvedev expressed confidence that in case of a strike, NATO would not start a war. The court is only a miserable international organization, not the population of a NATO country. Therefore, they will not start a war either. They will be afraid, and no one will be sorry. So judges, look carefully to the sky. This is somebody who works for a mafia-esque organization, which is the government of the Russian Federation, basically trying to extort the Hague and the ICC, saying that if you are to try to hold Vladimir Putin to account for his crimes, we will kill you. If you try to hold Putin to account for kidnapping Ukrainian children, we will murder you in your homes and nobody will stop us. Nobody can stop us from bombing you because we're going to use a hypersonic missile and we don't think anybody will come to your defense. So we're going to do it. We're going to fucking murder you and you better look out. You better look out your window because we're going to kill you so you can't go back home to your families. This is how a mafia operates. This is not how a modern state is supposed to operate. Now, I do need to point out, as I point out in the last video I did about this, that the United States has a legislation called the Hague Invasion Act, which could be used to do a military operation at The Hague to recover American service members if they were arrested under the ICC guidelines. And I do want to point this out so I can denounce that legislation as well, because that is equally as demented as the comments being made by Dmitry Medvedev now. Maybe it's not a direct call out like we will kill the court judges, so it's not to that level. But the fact that that legislation exists is absolutely horrific. Definitely when Bill Clinton was involved in the process to make the International Criminal Court and make it what it is today in the first place. And signed it, but it was never authorized by the Senate. Therefore, we're not a signatory. Therefore, we don't abide by its guidelines. I think if we're going to try to call out Vladimir Putin for this, then I think it's something that the United States should sign on to. That's not saying that Putin shouldn't get arrested. He should, but I believe we should be all playing by the same rules.